up slipping off of it because I didn't realize how significant what I was doing was. But over the last several years, I've come across information saying that, well, actually, biologically, humans look like we have been carnivores for quite a long time, and that biologically we're most adapted to that and predisposed to that, and we don't have these set up defenses against all the plant toxins that we may have used to have millions of years ago. And so that's led me down the path of just digging into the research and seeing what we knew and what we could understand, and led me back to a carnivore diet.
Yep, and my journey is much the same. I was morbidly obese, pre-diabetic, severe heartburn, lots of skin problems, lots of issues. And as I continued to cut the carbohydrates out of my diet, starting with the highly processed and added sugar and the vegetable seed oils, obviously, if you've ever done that, you know that meat and eggs are going to play a larger and larger and larger role in your diet because, contrary to what breatharians would have you believe, human beings have to eat. We have to eat or we will die. 100%. You cannot live on sunshine or air or water. You have to have food. And so as you cut out the processed carbs and then just the starches and the simple carbohydrates, you got to replace that with something. And the only thing out there is meat at some point, meat and eggs. And I think that we're going to have some vegans in the chat. I posted this on Twitter, so I'm sure we're going to have a few, and I hope we do.
Yeah.
Because like I said before you came on, vegans need information. They have questions every day. You and I see a new recovering vegan. It's like, dude, I took a bite of fish and my brain lit up. I ate some bacon and I felt orgasmic. And so I'm happy that there are vegans in the chat. And as long as they stay civil and ask reasonable questions, if you have no opposition, I'm happy to answer their questions.
No, happy to. I fully agree with you. I think that most people are looking for the same thing. They're trying to do what's right for themselves, what's right for the world around them, and that's exactly why people go vegan. It's quite a big step to go vegan or to go
Yes.
carnivore. You're massively overhauling your entire life, and so you don't do that just on a whim generally. And so
Absolutely. And I like to say that going vegan is the first step towards a proper human diet because it's not easy to go vegan.
yeah,
It can be relatively easy to go vegetarian, but if you're going to go vegan, that's gonna upend your life, and you have to think about every morsel of food before you put it in your mouth. And so, at least they're thinking about their diet and about nutrition, and I think that's an excellent first step. I applaud them for that. I wish everybody in the world would think about every morsel of food that goes into their face hole. I think that would be that would improve health immediately right off the bat if people would just do that. When I was a young child growing up, Granny Berry, who's not watching this today, guys, so you don't have to say hi to Granny Berry, but every vegetable that we ate was cooked to mush. If she were cooking beans, she would cook the beans for, I don't know, 2 or 3 days.
I'm just setting up.
Right? If she bought dried beans, I mean, they cooked
So I can
until
see how many
they was
viewers
just
I have.
mush.
I'm just setting
It was like
up.
mashed beans when she got done. And growing up, I thought, well, she's just a Southern woman. That's just how they cook in the South.
If you
They
guys have
cook
any
everything to
questions,
death.
link
But
it down in the
when
live chat.
I started looking at diet and started looking at archaeological and anthropological research, it's common knowledge that every society that was forced to eat a high plant diet, they either cooked it to death or they fermented it, right? And they didn't do that because they were ignorant or stupid. They did that because through thousands of generations of trial and error, they had figured out if you eat this shit raw, it's not good for you. There will be ramifications and repercussions if you eat this raw,
If
if
you're
you eat too
watching,
much
comment
of it.
down below.
And so Granny was just doing
Comment in the
what
live chat.
her grandmothers had taught her to
Are
do,
you
which it was, if you're going to
interested
eat
in
plants, you
more
need to cook the shit out of them. And
carnivore
so
diet
I think that
videos?
if
you want me
anybody
to
really
make
looks
some
into
more
this, you'll
content like
quickly
this,
find
if you like,
that in many cultures,
if you
humans
wanna
eat
be-
meat raw or
you
very,
wanna be
very
healthy,
rare.
in a sense, you
But they
understand
cook the
health-
veg to
health
death.
field,
They cook it to
any of
death.
that,
And
just let me know.
I don't like to say plants are
Post more
trying to
I'll
kill
post
you.
more
I know what you
content
mean by
videos
that.
like this.
I like to say that plants are trying to strongly discourage you
yeah,
not to eat their leaves and their babies. Now, some plants like castor beans and poison hemlock, they're sure as hell they're trying to kill you if you eat them. But I think most plants are just trying to discourage you from eating their babies and
We're
eating
talking
their
about
leaves.
plants
Let's see
that
if I
have
can
their
find
plants
a
are full of
question here.
toxins.
Yes,
Man, so
Esther,
full of
face hole.
toxins
That's what we
that
call it
we
here
haven't really
in the
been
South. By the way, where's everybody watching from? What city? What
that we
state?
haven't
What
really been
country?
informed
Is
about.
anybody watching from Australia?
There's
You're
lots
right
of
up the
toxins
road
in
from
plants that
Dr. Chafee. I
it's
know
not
any drive in Australia is at
like
least a 4 hour
fatal
drive.
for
Is what
us,
I've been
but it's
told.
not
It
good for
is.
us.
Is that right?
From Perth,
Okay, let's
it's a
see.
24-hour drive.
Yeah, I think that the carnivore diet
And I'm
naturally
taking notes on all this
produces
because I'm
increased
putting it all
testosterone and
down in
therefore
a Word
facial hair
document so that
production. A
way I
lot of
could
people are
create an
commenting on
ebook.
our
So if you guys are interested
sexy
in my
beards. I don't
ebook
blame them a bit. We got
that
somebody from
I'll be
Hawaii
crafting
watching.
in the next, I don't
Roxanne
know
says
how
meat
long
heals,
it'll
carbs are
take me to
non-essential.
make this. I'll
What do you
probably do
say
this
to
all
that,
night.
Doc? Do you agree with that?
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
be
well,
working on this
definitely. I
all
mean,
night after I
there's no such
finish
thing as
the
an essential carbohydrate,
after I
from
finish
what
this
I
video.
understand, and
I'm
from
gonna
what I think
transition
that
to
the literature
remove
shows, and there's certainly
the notes over
populations around
here
the
so that way
world
you guys
living
can see
today
me in
that
real
have never had a
time implementing
carbohydrate,
my notes.
and I think you'd be hard pressed to find a plentiful source of carbohydrates during the ice ages, and that was when people argue. I have had this discussion with people from the vegan persuasion, and they say, well, when the ice ages were happening, everyone was moving towards the equator, which is actually goes against the paleoanthropological record. Actually, we found that as the ice sheets were coming down, people were moving up
Yep.
into the ice. And just to comment on how you're saying everything was cooked to mash, that's right. There are a lot of things like the lectins in beans. You have to cook the living hell out of these things, and that doesn't necessarily get them all out of there. It was interesting actually. The WHO, who's very much anti-meat, and they talk about if you want to have like plant-based or bug-based or all these sorts of different things, just anything but meat. They actually have a page on their website that goes into it's called
See, this is why I
natural
don't trust
food
the
toxins found
World
in
Health
food, and it just says
Organization or
in
any of
food,
that.
and so it goes through all these things that people
Because it's
naturally eat
ridiculous
and
how
regularly on
something
a
like
daily
this,
basis around the
these guys are
world.
debunking
Every
the
single one
lies
comes
that
from
the
a
World
plant or
Health
algae. Every
Organization and the
single one. There isn't
USDA
a
are telling us.
single toxin that comes from meat. There's
And they're telling us all
algae
about
that
all this.
maybe shellfish and seafood would
I'm
really
gonna
get them
replay it
all.
real quick. Let me
Toxins
replay
and
that
beans,
real quick.
everything was cooked to mash. That's right. There are a lot of things like the lectins in beans. You have to cook the living hell out of these things, and that doesn't necessarily get them all
The live chat's gonna
out
be
of
right here
there.
instead.
It was interesting actually. The WHO, who's very much anti-meat, and they talk about if you want to have like plant-based or bug-based or all these sorts of different things, just anything but meat. They actually have a page on their website that goes into it's called natural food toxins found in food, and it just says in food, and so it goes through all these things that people naturally eat and regularly on a daily basis around the world. Every single one comes from a plant or algae. Every single one. There isn't a
Yep.
single toxin that comes from meat. There's algae that maybe shellfish and seafood would eat, and then that makes them harmful because they bring that toxin into them. But that's not the animal making that. That is the algae, and everything else is a plant food. And so all of these things like cassava root and many other things that are main staples. I think like 500 million people, their number one caloric source is cassava root, and that has bitter cassava root has a deadly amount of cyanide in it. And I do agree with you about the plants not actually
Hold on. I gotta take notes on what they just said.
is cassava root, and that 500 million people, their number one caloric source is cassava root, and that has bitter cassava root has a deadly amount of cyanide in it. And I do agree with you about the plants not actually trying to kill you. I don't think they're just sitting there just waiting for you outside of your door. It's just sort of a funny thing that my professor said to me that just stuck with me. I mean, it really made a big impact in my life because I mean, he just looked at us like we were. I remember thinking, like, but vegetables are still good for you, right? And he just looked at us like we were crazy. He's like, get this through your head. This stuff is poison. And so, and it did. It really stuck with me, and so that's sort of it still sort of makes me smile about
And
that.
you were very lucky to have a professor who would say such a
Mm.
thing because I think the vast majority of people in undergraduate university these days would never hear such a thing come from their professor's mouth. We've got a ton of questions coming in, guys. I'm going to try, Dr.
I need
Chaffee
two
and I are going to
pins.
try to answer as
I
many as
need
we
two
can.
pins.
If you really need the answer to your question, you can bump it to the top with a super chat like Ashley did. Ashley says, how do I know when I need more meat fat for my ADD today when I try to paperclip my iPhone to a packet of documents?
um, so yeah, well, I think that you need a lot of fat. A lot of animals, if you look in the wild, they're eating quite a high proportion of their calories will come from fat. Sometimes 70, even 80% of their calories will come from fat. And so, but I think you need enough fat. You need enough proteins. I don't necessarily. So I just to make that point clear. I tend to look at, if you're going on pure meat and water, then I think you can actually look, well, by how you feel, your energy levels, but also by your stool, strangely enough, because it's very hard for our body to absorb fat without bile. And we make a certain amount of bile. I think that physiologically, that means that our bodies wants that much fat out. Our body's very efficient. It doesn't really just waste its time and waste energy making things that it doesn't need, generally. And so I think that it's going to make that bile because it wants that return on its investment to get that fat. After you run out of bile, most of this will go out. You can absorb some, usually like medium chain fatty acids, but a lot of it, the majority of it, will go out. And I think that overflow of fat will actually get into your stool and keep it soft. And so if you're getting dry, hard stools, then I think that means that you're by definition not getting enough fat because you're absorbing just every ounce of fat that's coming in. If you're getting a little bit more and you get that spillover, then it becomes soft. You get way more than your body can absorb, then it comes out very loosely, like fat through a goose. That's where that phrase comes from.
Yep.
And so I think that if you're just doing meat and water, that you can tell that way. And
Yeah.
also just, energy levels is a big one too.
Absolutely. And you brought up bile, and I can tell everybody watching right now that if you have one of the following three conditions, then you absolutely have not been eating enough animal fat in your diet. If you have gallbladder dysfunction, or if you have gallbladder sludge, or if you have gallstones, then by definition, you've not been eating enough animal fat in at least the recent or distant past, or you would not have those things. Let's see. Mr. Ed says, my arm's swollen up 2 days ago. Felt like it's full of fluid, very hot. Now it's all gone. Same thing happened to my knee. I'm full carnivore 6 months, now down 65 pounds. Booyah for that. Any thoughts?
Well, I mean, there are things that we caused, that can happen to our bodies that are outside of, purely dietary, causes and reasons. So, I would wonder if there's something else going on there. It is good that that's resolved. If you're having hot swelling in your knee, that's a bit concerning. You might want to get someone to take a look at that and just make sure that
Yep, 100%.
going on
You need
there.
to see your doctor, Mr. Ed.
Yeah.
If it was your entire arm that swelled up, that's quite concerning. That could be actually something serious. You definitely need to see your primary care physician and follow up on that. Dennis Balone says, Carnivore, what's the meaning of this, please? So Nisha, my wife, and a few other people on social media kind of coined this phrase, Carnivore. And what it means is a meat heavy, fatty red meat, lots of eggs with the yolk, and less than 10 total grams of carbohydrate a day. And if I left something out, I know Nisha will pipe up and let me know. But the basically super, super low carbohydrate, mainly meat. Many days she'll eat nothing but meat for several days. And then she'll have some veg or some whatever. But the vast majority of your diet is meat-based, ketovore. That's the definition of that. Kathy says, DX polycythemia, will carnivore keto make it worse? That's an easy one to answer.
No, I don't think so. No.
No, it will not. It may actually help. It's definitely not going to hurt. Definitely follow up with your doctor and follow your doctor's recommendations about phlebotomy and other things. But polycythemia or polycythemia vera is a genetic thing that's been in the human gene line for thousands of generations. We don't know exactly if it's just a genetic defect that gives no benefit whatsoever. But most of these things that have stayed in the cell line in the genetic line for so many thousand generations typically
And this is all free.
have a benefit
All
that
this
we may or
information
may
is
not be
free on
aware of,
YouTube.
much like sickle cell. If you have sickle
Just do the
cell
research.
trait, which is
Do the
just
research.
you have it for just
You're
one
not
side of
gonna
the
find it from
family,
your doctor.
it's actually
I'm
very
not gonna
protective
recommend
against
you to
malaria.
go
But
on
if you have
YouTube and watch
the
this.
trait
You
from
gotta
both
find
sides and
this
have sickle cell
information. This is all
disease, then
free on
it's
YouTube
it's
for
a
you to have
sucky, shitty
access to.
disease. But there's actually a reason that that's still in the gene pool because it does offer some benefit. But even though, Kathy, you have polycythemia, you're still a human being and you're going to benefit greatly in hundreds of ways from eating a proper human diet.
Absolutely.
Let's see. Thank you, Jordan, for the super chat. Let's see. Oh, here is Deckerless carbs with cost of all food, especially meat, going up. Any concerns with ground beef being the primary food on carnivore.
No, no, absolutely not. I think ground beef is great. It's meat, I think just because it's coming in a sort of a slightly different package, it's still the same quality. As long as nothing's being added to it, then it's exactly the same. And so I think ground beef is a very, very good option for people. Ground beef can be quite lean, but so you might need to sort of add maybe some tallow to it. But I actually get my butcher to make 50-50 ground beef, which is great.
Lean, you're going to have to add a lot of other fat to that. Also, Deckerless Carbs is actually Amanda Decker. She's a nurse practitioner in Dixon, Tennessee, and very active on Twitter. She helps you and me fight the Twitter wars every day. I love Amanda Decker. So if anybody's in the Dixon, Nashville area and you need a primary care provider who understands keto, ketovore, carnivore, Deckerless Carbs, that's your person. Thank you for the super chat. Let's see. Michaela says, hey, thoughts on probiotics? Are they any good? Are they worth it? My doc is suggesting probiotics for healing my gut.
Well, I think that anything that you eat is going to affect your microbiome. But if you're eating what you're naturally biologically supposed to eat, prepared to eat, and designed to eat, that's going to go along with your microbiome as well. And so I think that if you're just eating the right things, such as meat, and not eating other things, I think you'll just be fine. Maybe if you took antibiotics, maybe you have some.
Thank you for the super chat. Let's see. Michaela says, hey, thoughts on probiotics? Are they any good? Are they worth it? My doc is suggesting probiotics for healing my gut.
Well, I think that anything that you eat is going to affect your microbiome. But if you're eating what you're naturally biologically supposed to eat, prepared to eat, and designed to eat, that's going to go along with your microbiome as well. And so I think that if you're just eating the right things, such as meat, and not eating other things, I think you'll just be fine. Maybe if you took antibiotics, maybe you have some live culture yogurt or something like that to sort of restock. But I think other than that, you don't need to worry about it.
Yeah, sugar-free full-fat yogurt is excellent. If you can find sugar-free full-fat kefir, I think that's okay. Any of the fermented dairy is probably fine as long as it's full fat and sugar-free. I think it's probably fine. Kyla says,
hold on, fermented. Okay, fermented.
fine as long as it's full fat and sugar-free. I think it's probably fine. Kyla says, best remedy for paresthesia besides B1 deficiency, you probably meant supplementation. Could low carb help with this? Doctor ordered occupational therapy, but I'm not sure.
So, look, there's so many different causes of these sorts of things. And so,
Yes.
it really just depends on what's causing it. And, certainly vitamin, alterations can affect that. But I have seen this in practice in neurosurgery. We deal with a lot of spinal impingement and radiculopathies and just pain shooting down the limbs. And this is something that we see get resolved even just on a keto diet and carnivore as well. You're just reducing inflammation. You're reducing your body's experience of the pain, stress, and trauma that's going on in your body. So that is something that can be resolved. But again, it does depend on what's causing it.
Yep, absolutely. Oh, here's a left-handed question about fiber. Michelle's an ex-vegan, had fibroids, had a full hysterectomy, was told to eat lots of fiber post-surgery. She got a bowel blockage, emergency surgery, also gallstones, gallbladder removed. PhD was the answer. Yeah, proper human diet was your answer. You want to give us your bullet points on fiber and how much is essential to human health?
Yeah, I know. I don't think there's any that you want. In fact, I think that not only is it not necessary, I think that it can actually be harmful, as we've just seen there. I mean, a lot of people get, they take fiber because they say, well, this will move your bowels, but in fact, in a lot of cases, it ends up blocking them up because this is cellulose at the end of the day, and you end up getting a block of wood stuck in your colon, and it just slows down, and we're not eating fat anymore, and so things are just dry and hard, and they dry out. And that's when we started advising people to eat fiber in the first place, was in the 1980s, when everyone stopped eating fat and they all started getting constipation. So I think that fiber is problematic for a number of reasons, that being one of them. But also, it physically blocks the absorption of nutrients. It gets in the way of your enzymatic relationship between your nutrients, and then those then digested nutrients are now prevented from getting to the lumen of your intestines. So you're actually slowing down and block biologically viable. So I don't think that
Yeah.
that's the natural thing to do.
Yeah, it's so funny how you progress as you become somewhat of an authority in a topic. When I first started this 5 years ago, Doc, I would have said, "Oh yeah, you got to have some fiber. You know, you need to eat lots of Brussels sprouts, broccoli, kale, spinach." And then I'm like, "Well, maybe we don't need any fiber." And then
Mhm.
after more reading and more looking at everything with fresh eyes, which is very important, I'm like, "No, obviously we don't need any fiber whatsoever." And now I'm slowly, begrudgingly taking the final step of saying, I think for at least for many people, especially if you have IBS, Crohn's,
Mhm.
ulcerative colitis, you don't need any fiber whatsoever. You literally need to put on your when you go to a restaurant, you need to say, I'm allergic to fiber. I don't need anything with fiber in it because it'll flare my gut up. I've seen Rebecca's got had this question several times. I'm not sure if she's being legit or not. She's been keto carnivore for 4 months, and now she has a candida infection. She doesn't say where. Doc says the fungus feeds on fat in my diet as well as sugar. What are your thoughts?
No, no, I don't think I've never heard that. Anyway, I don't know. Have
Never
you?
heard that. Yeah, candida is a fungus. It loves sugar, Rebecca. It loves sugar and it hates sunlight. So keto carnivore is the eating a proper human diet is going to load the dice in your favor. Now, this is a very important concept for all 1,900 of you guys listen to this. Being a carnivore does not make you bulletproof. Being a carnivore does not make you immortal. Okay, it might make you feel like an Avenger, but you ain't really. Okay, you're still a human being, and there every day you have a chance of getting hit by a bus. You have a chance of contracting some infection. You have a chance of getting a yeast infection, but the odds are ever in your favor if you're eating a very low carbohydrate, very low sugar diet and also getting some sun. So, Rebecca, what I would tell you to do is to keep eating your meat and go out in the backyard if you've got privacy fence and get some sun on the area. And your candida will be gone very, very quickly. But definitely, there's no fungus that I've ever read about. And I'm an animal biologist. That's what I got my undergrad in. Then went to medical school, and we studied fungus a lot. And I've never heard of a fungus that eats fat. I think your doctor may be misinformed or just trying to misinform you.
See what these
All
doctors are
right.
doing?
Karsten says debilitating Hashimoto and fibromyalgia for 20 years. Can there be a long cleaning reactions like keto flu from time to time, even after months on carnivore?
Like clean. I suppose I mean like just getting a bad sort of reaction, feeling sort of unwell after. Um, I mean, I guess there's the the theory of that sort of oxalate dumping months and
Yeah,
months on,
yeah,
and so potentially that. I've seen people with fibromyalgia for years, literally decades, uh, get better and improve. A lot of chronic pain patients, they improve greatly by just getting out all these very inflammatory and really toxic foods out of their diet, and certainly all the processed foods and sugars and things like that. Those are just awful, and then just getting as much of that out of your system is very beneficial. And Hashimoto's, outside of neurosurgery, I have a private practice in functional medicine and metabolic health, and we have a number of patients with Hashimoto's. It's actually quite, I think it's quite under described, really. I mean, the amount of people that just come to us with just vague symptoms, just feeling just sort of
yeah.
generally unwell, and we sort of test for it, and they have just low grade Hashimoto's is remarkable.
It's
And
very, very
yeah,
underdiagnosed here in the States.
yeah.
I don't know about in
No, I
Australia.
think no, absolutely. I think so, and it's surprising how many more that we've seen when these people just there's just something
Mhm.
wrong, and they can tell their body's not working properly, and we do a deep dive into their bloods, and then we find that quite often, and all
This
of
is
them
where I
improve.
left off.
I mean,
I left
it's
off here.
like Crohn's and ulcerative colitis, like and other such autoimmune disorders. They respond extraordinarily well to a keto and even and especially carnivore diet. I've seen Hashimoto's does as well, but it takes longer to resolve from what I've seen. And so
Yep,
over a year and a half, people are going, but they're getting better all the time.
yep.
And so yeah, just something to be encouraged by.
Yeah, and my wife Nisha actually has Hashimoto's. She was
Mm.
diagnosed several years ago. Paleo did not help at all. Keto maybe helped a tiny bit, not much. But when she went ketovore, just almost exclusively meat with an occasional veg, occasional fruit, occasional nuts, She's currently in remission. Her
Nice.
TPO antibody and TG antibodies are both normal, and she's currently taking no thyroid hormone replacement and virtually has no symptoms at all. And so I do think that kind of healing from Hashimoto's is entirely possible because I've seen it with my own eyes. But I think the healing rate's going to be different in different people depending on your other medical conditions, your age, your overall status, etc. I was going to add oh yes, about the as so I think many people as they lost quite a bit of weight, right? I think that it's entirely possible that there is some storage of oxalates and other toxins in fat. I think that's true, and I don't think your body sequesters toxins in your fat so that if you lose weight too fast, you can just poison your own self. I don't believe that, but I do believe that depending on what you were eating when that fat was stored, you probably have some toxic storage in there and some oxalates. And so it wouldn't surprise me as you go through your layers of fat and metabolize it that you might have these occasional waves every once a week, once a month of like, oh man, and then I feel better again. That wouldn't surprise me at all. Kirst has got an update and a question down from 459 pounds down to 421
Nice.
plus or five, depending on the day. Same. Second month carnivore, but I think I've already hit my first plateau or slowed. It's been over a week now, and I haven't dropped below the 420 mark. Any thoughts?
Yeah, well, this is something that we commonly see, and why I encourage people to not really necessarily pay attention too much to the scale,
Yes.
but how you feel. I mean, the main thing here is health. I would think that you would agree. That's the main thing. The overarching theme is you're trying to be healthy. You're trying to do what's right for your body,
Yep.
and what people don't. At first maybe see is that it's not just about weight. You don't have just this rock hard body of lean muscle and then just this exterior fat. Your body's going to be, your body composition is going to be changing dramatically, and while you're losing fat, you'll also be putting on muscle, especially if you're exercising. And so you may not actually lose weight at all, but your clothes might fit differently. They might be more loose on you. Your face might be thinner, and you might feel a lot better. I know when I came back to carnivore 5-6 years ago, I even just going from just basically keto, like a lot of vegetables, way too many vegetables, and not enough meat, and I switched that right around to a ton of meat and no vegetables. I lost a significant amount of weight, probably most of it to do with water weight early on, and then after about 2 weeks, I stayed exactly the same. I stayed the exact same weight for 3 months, but I changed visibly. I was
Yep.
visibly changing, and I was just replacing my fat with muscle, and my muscle weighs
Absolutely.
more than fat. So
And
there you go.
that's very common. I see that all the time in our private group. And two things I would advise anybody in our previous question or situation: if you're obese or severely obese, get a tailor's tape and take your body measurements. Number one. Number two, be patient and be prepared for stalls like this. This is completely normal, and I'm going to explain to you why this is normal. Only in modern society is it okay and good for a human being to lose weight. Okay, for the entirety of our existence on this planet, 100% of the time, if you were losing weight, that was a disaster. That meant that you were circling the drain. Would soon be dead. Animals in the wild, if they start to lose weight, even sheep in my pasture, if I see a sheep starting to get thin and starting to not eat and getting thinner and thinner, that's terrible. That's a terrible, ominous sign. And so you have to understand your body, even though we live in a modern society with our iPhone 16, we still have an ancient body, ancient DNA, and it does not know that there's a Circle K right down the road and that there's a Kroger's and a Super Walmart. It doesn't know that. It just knows that you're losing weight, and very often the human body will freak out. It'll put on the brakes. And it's like, oh shit, we've lost. Whoa, what's going on here? And then when you assure your body that there's not a famine, you're not in trouble, you haven't fallen in a crevasse and have a broken femur, there's plenty of food. And the way you reassure your metabolism of that is by eating lots of healthy animal fat and protein. Because if there is a famine, or if you did fall down the crevasse, you're not going to be eating any animal fat or protein, right? And so that this is why many people on a predominantly plant-based diet just can't lose weight at all, because their body's freaking out because it's like, shit, there's no animal fat or animal protein. There's a famine. I'm not losing any fat whatsoever. But when you reassure your body daily with lots of fatty meat, your body is like, okay, I got you. There's not a famine. I can go ahead and burn off some more of this stored fat.
Yeah, 100% agree with that.
All
Absolutely.
right. Mike says, as CEO of a personal trainer company, low carb meal delivery, and more than 200,000 customers, our number one battle is confusion. The experts push low fat, veg, fruit, etc. Will they ever leave the dark side? How can they ignore the data?
Yeah. Well, I think that, there's quite a weight of inertia behind all this, and it's just like, I mean, and we've all been told this. I mean, literally since I was born, we've just been getting this, just inundated with this, and I think it really took, my professor really just yelling, it's like plants are trying to kill you before that actually sunk in my head. I mean, we looked at all the data and all the information about how toxic these things were. And still in my head, I was like, but they're still good for you though, right? It's just, we're just indoctrinated. I mean, I learned in seventh grade that plants and animals are an evolutionary arms race, with plants becoming more
100%.
and more toxic. So animals can't eat them, and animals becoming more adapted to those poisons. And then we just forget that humans are animals and
Right.
we're involved in this as well.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so,
And I
you
think
know,
that's an excellent point, Doc. I think people just and I actually have people call me out and say, no, we are not animals. We are
right,
not animals. Why would you say that? And I'm like, what the hell do you think you are? And I think people, we've lived in modern society for so many
We're
generations,
mammals.
and
Mammals are
we've been
animals.
taught that we're somehow
It's a
removed and
species of
special.
animal.
And you guys may think, oh, I don't live in the wild. You 100% still live in the wild, even
We just
if
built
you're
a
in a house
society
with
on
all the
top of the
accoutrement.
wild.
You're still in the wild, okay? And if the economy gets a little worse, we'll all remember and realize, oh well, shit, we are still in the wild. But even though we live in a seemingly artificial surrounding, your body's still listening, and your DNA still is going to do the things it's
Gotta
going to
love this kind
do,
of content, man.
and it still matters. And you're an animal. You are Homo sapiens sapien. I'm sorry if that hurts your feelings, but it's true. Okay. You would think we wouldn't have to say this. Gwarkin
yeah,
says it appears some men developed elevated sex hormone binding globulin levels on keto carnivore. Paul Saladino
Oh,
was
feeling
one
the
such
fuzziness.
example. I too experienced this. Any thoughts? Thank you.
yeah. I mean, that's something that I think you can see sort of isolated examples of. I certainly haven't seen that in myself, and I haven't seen that in my patients either. So I don't. I do wonder if something else is going on, if there's something else adding to
We're
this.
gonna watch
And
more videos after this.
Dr. Saladino,
I do have
is a very
to.
healthy
I
guy,
have to
but
do a
for
lot of
some
this.
reason, after
So
a year
before
and
I
a
have to
half,
write
2
this
years, he
book,
was
I need
having
to
quite
gain as
significant health
much
issues and
information as
ramifications,
possible.
and he attributed that to lack of carbohydrates. But I've
I already
had,
have a good
you
amount,
know less carbohydrates, for
but
longer. I
it's
have
never
not run
enough.
into those problems. And you look at
Never enough
yeah,
information. I
and
need to
you
know
look at,
more and more and
the
more.
Inuit and other populations, and like we said earlier, there really is no such thing as an essential carbohydrate. And so if we were going to be getting damage to our sex hormone binding globulin and our testosterone and our thyroid and our electrolytes, then that would make them essential, right? If we needed them to regulate those systems well, and but we
Absolutely.
don't.
Yeah.
And so I think there's
And
something else.
I've actually done hormone optimization in my practice before the clinic burned down, and I've checked thousands of sex hormone binding globulin levels. And what I've seen
I need to reach out to Tim
uniformly is
Berry.
that sex hormone binding
I
globulin
need to
levels
reach out to him.
return to normal as you decrease the
Mm,
carbohydrates and increase the fatty meat. I'm not sure what happened with Dr. Saladino, who Dr. Chafee and I both are friends with him. We like him a
mm,
lot. We
yeah.
don't necessarily agree with his recommendations, but I find Paul's case to be the exception to the rule, not the rule, because, like I said, in thousands of cases, I've seen the SHBG go down as someone decreases the carbohydrates. You guys are all asking about the canned meat recipe. Nisha Berry says that you can Google that. Okay. Kim, I have a friend that had open heart surgery and is very interested in carnivore. What are your thoughts?
I think that they should definitely get on top of that. As people that are in sort of extremes of health are much more. It's much more important for them to get on top of this. I think this is important for everyone. I think I think I've heard you actually say some of your things that, when people say that, well, what about me in this situation? It's like, yes, the answer is yes to any type of question. This is the right thing to do for every person in every situation in every environment, because that's just our biology.
Yep,
This is our proper human diet. This is our biologically species specific appropriate diet. And
absolutely.
um
If
yeah,
you're a
I mean,
human, If you're
Yeah.
that means you're an animal, and if you're an animal, you should eat a species-specific diet. And for us, that is at least a fatty red meat,
PhD,
heavy,
proper human
low
diet.
carb diet, keto, ketovore, or just go all the way and just eat all the meat and eggs. Dan says, what are your preferred ways to cook your steaks? I personally sous vide, then sear with a torch.
That's a great way of doing it. I prepare them. I have a couple of videos on YouTube showing this, but I get like the big Costco packs of like ribeyes or New Yorks, and I keep them in the cryovac pack and just in the fridge for 4 to 6 weeks is sort of the longest I've done is 6 weeks. Usually about 4 weeks is where you want to hit it, and that's wet aging. So if you go to like a nice fancy steakhouse, we'll say it's 30-day wet age, 30-day dry age. That's the wet aging part of that is just leaving it in the cryovac and just forgetting about it. And then I get it out. I cut up into quite thick steaks, usually about 3-inch steaks usually,
Probably
and
don't have that much
I
to get
maybe
from
lightly salt them. I'm using less and less salt as I go, but I still do a bit of salt. I put them on drying racks. I let them dry out. Usually about for the big thick steaks, I find for my preference is 5 to 7 days is sort of a sweet spot of taste and texture. And
Yep.
then I'll pan fry them or I'll grill them. If I pan fry them, I'll use a thick coating of tallow, and it almost like deep fries and it crisps up the sides. It's actually
Mm-hmm.
amazing.
more
Like it
water.
makes
Yep.
this like
Yep. And I
crunchy
do the
dough.
same exact thing in a cast iron skillet, and I actually
Yeah.
use bacon grease, get it super
Nice.
hot, and then put the steak, and then you get the medium rare interior, and you get that crispy sear on the outside. It's freaking amazing. The only thing I would add, Dan, is if you're sous videing regularly, please sous vide in either glass containers or silicone containers. Please do not sous vide in plastic.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. Deckerless Carb says, throwing this one back out, are there any concerns with long term carnivore and decreased metabolic flexibility?
No, I no, I don't think so, and I think that that's actually supported by the data as well.
There
Professor Ben
is
Bickman out of
no.
BYU speaks about this. He's been
Wow.
studying insulin metabolism for over 15 years, and he was discussing different research talking about metabolic flexibility in the sense of saying, well, maybe you become insulin insensitive because you haven't been using this. And there's studies that like if you've been keto or carnivore for a number of months, and then you do a glucose tolerance test, that you might have a pretty poor result. However, after a couple of days, it normalizes and you're completely fine. The reason for that, as he explains, is that when you're eating a lot, talking about metabolic flexibility,
We need
and
to.
he was discussing different supported by the
Are there any concerns with
We need to
long term carnivore and
replay that again
decreased
and again.
metabolic flexibility?
No, I no, I don't think so, and I think that that's actually supported by the data as well. Professor Ben Bickman out of BYU speaks
Hold
about.
on, hold on. I need to note down the professor. Ben Bickman, BYU, Boston.
About this. He's been studying insulin metabolism for over 15 years, and he was discussing different research talking about metabolic flexibility in the sense of saying, well, maybe you become insulin insensitive because you haven't been using this. And there's studies that like if you've been keto or carnivore for a number of months, and then you do a glucose tolerance test, that you might have a pretty poor result. However, after a couple of days, it normalizes and you're completely fine. The reason for that, as he explains, is that when you're eating a large burden of exogenous carbohydrates, your body actually preloads your pancreas with insulin. And so you pre-make this insulin anticipating this
I was thinking about something. Hold on.
that you might have a pretty poor result. However, after a couple of days, it normalizes and you're completely fine. The reason for that, as he explains, is that when you're eating a large burden of exogenous carbohydrates, your body actually preloads your pancreas with insulin. And so you
Body preloads when consumed. That's so crazy. Like carbohydrates have been normalized, along with all the other bullshit that's that goes on in like the world. A whole bunch of bullshit. Like it's sad. It's truly sad when you think about it and you learn and you like take the time and actually learn this shit. It's like there's so much. If you look around you, carbs are everywhere. everywhere. You see carbs, carbs this, carbs that, carb this, carb this, carb this, sugar, 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 sugar. Here, 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 here. Give it to you. It's literally given out. Even if it's for free, they give it out for you. They don't care. Carbs is just there's an abundance of carbs because it's been. I don't know if I don't want to say the wrong information because I'm not too heavily. I'm not so like educated in the space, but carbs is just it's been so it's so regulated and normalized that people just it's all people know, and obviously with like vegans they're pushing this narrative like hey here you gotta stop eating steak, stop eating meat, stop killing animals, and it's like bro, it's either kill or be killed. You either kill or you be killed in this world that we live in. It doesn't matter. It's just evolution in general. Not even just human evolution. It's evolution in general. You kill or be killed. Or suffer the consequences. If you don't want to get with the program, you suffer the consequences. So that's it. And there's oh my god. Alright. We're gonna continue this. First of all, we're consuming lots of preload, lots of carbs. You preload your pancreas. With insulin, which oh my god, that sounds terrible.
Pre-make this insulin anticipating this big
Yes.
rush of carbs, and then when you're not doing that, your body doesn't have to do that because like we said earlier, your body's efficient. It's not just going to make something for the fun of it, you know. So it's anticipating this big shock of sugar, because and high blood sugar kills diabetics. It causes direct damage to our body. So it's like, okay, we got to be careful here. And when you're not doing that, you lull your body into a false sense of security, and then you blindside it with some carbs. It's going to take a bit of time to adjust to that, but it will adjust to that.
Yeah.
And so there's that flexibility.
Totally agree. And the human body is miraculously capable of adapting to different diets. We see this every day in the vegan community when they don't drop dead. It's obvious that the human body can adapt to even maladapted diets. But when you're eating a diet full of protein and fat and very little carbohydrate, your pancreas has no reason to pre-make all this insulin and have it sitting there at the ready. But as soon as you eat that, of course your pancreas is going to ramp right back up with insulin production. It's not an idiot. Soleimani says, do I need to worry about potassium and magnesium supplementation? When I add up my potassium intake from Carnivore, it falls short by 2,000 milligrams, assuming 4,000 milligrams a day is normal.
Down earlier.
No, I haven't seen any of that either, and in actual practice. But also, again, if we're going back to the fundamental principles that this is our biologically appropriate diet, then you're going to have everything you need in the proportion that you need it, and so your body's going to work differently depending on what you eat. And when you're eating what you're supposed to eat, you will maintain that. I've never had a problem with potassium. I've never had a problem with patients with their potassium or magnesium. In fact, magnesium goes up. There's a shortage of magnesium in Australia for some reason.
Oh, in the U.S. as well, absolutely.
Yeah. And I find that comes right up.
Only two things I would add to that. There's two ways that the way we eat meat today and the way we drink water today is not ancestrally appropriate. Our ancestors 50,000 years ago, they drank river water, stream water, puddle water. Okay, that's the water they drink, and all that water is rich in electrolytes and minerals, right? And also, when our ancestors 50,000 years ago, when they dropped a 2,000-pound elephant or a 1,000-pound bison, they didn't have a blocking definition was still bloody. Okay. Now, when Dr. Chafee or I, when we check someone's electrolyte balances, we check the blood because the blood is an excellent source of potassium, of magnesium, of sodium, of chloride. And so by eating the bloody meat and by drinking standing water or running water, they were getting excellent sources of electrolytes and minerals. And that's actually one of the reasons I helped Keto Chow develop. By drinking standing water or running water, they were getting excellent sources of electrolytes and minerals. And that's actually one of the reasons I
Mineral
helped Keto
water.
Chow develop the daily mineral drops, is for just those two things. That, I'm not advocating people go out and drink mud puddle water, because you're going to get the shits if you do that. Please don't do that. Right. And also, most people do not want their meat bloody. They want it to be thoroughly drained, because that's how we grew up eating it. That's what looks normal to us, but that's actually not normal. We've only been doing that for the last few hundred years. And so it seems to me like some people, because we've got this normal distribution curve, right? The vast majority of people,
Because
their
right now they're just talking
magnesium
about
gets
stuff that
better
I
on carnivore,
already
no questions, even
kind of know
keto.
about. So
Potassium
it's just
always stays within normal limits in my
reassuring me.
experience. But there is some people over here on this end of the tail who have to think about supplementing with something like that, for whatever reason. I think it's just the normal variability in the genetic differences in people. Although there's not many, there are a few. But you haven't seen much of that in your practice, needing supplementation like that.
No, no, certainly not. But I definitely agree. When people come to me and say like they have something that's a bit off, like, well, what is this? And like, well, it doesn't really matter what it is. It is low, and so it's okay to actually sort of supplement in those conditions. Just taking supplements,
Do you know which arm
just for the
that
sake
is?
of it, I don't think is maybe necessary. But if you have a
Agreed.
diagnosed deficiency in
Yeah,
something, then yeah, absolutely, for whatever reason, that you have a deficiency in that, and that is a mineral that's useful, and that supplementation it would be beneficial in that case.
I totally agree. Warbuck says both you guys are great. Thank you, Warbuck. You're changing the paradigm. That's the plan. Should I get my type 1 diabetic son on carnivore?
Hell yeah, you should.
100%, absolutely. I mean, we've been using a ketogenic diet since I think the 1800s for diabetics to help stabilize their blood sugars,
Yes.
and yeah, absolutely.
Hear
I mean,
that?
and again, to your earlier
Camera's
point,
right there. I'm over here looking
is
at
your
the
son
mirror.
human? Then yes, he should
Yes.
definitely be on,
100%.
on a human diet.
Absolutely. And I would say anybody who's a type 1 diabetic, anybody who has LADA, anybody who has MODY, anybody who's pre diabetic or type 2 diabetic, you need to start either meat heavy keto or carnivore tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
Literally tomorrow morning,
Not
you need
even
to
tomorrow
stop.
morning.
Now,
Say
if
day
you're
one.
currently insulin dependent, you've got to either get a CGM to where, or you've got to prick your finger 7, 8, 9, 10 times a day. And you also need to touch base with your doctor,
At
because your
first,
blood sugar levels are going to start to,
hold on. I need a.
you've got to either get a CGM.
For diabetics, because this is important to note down, especially if nobody's really watching this. Fuck it. But fuck it. Hey, we're in this bitch together. It's been 45 minutes so far. Damn. So CGM, insulin dependent. It's dependent.
To where, or you've got to prick your finger 7, 8, 9, 10 times a day. And you also need to touch base with your doctor, because your blood sugar levels are going to start to plummet quickly, in a good way, not a bad way. But you got to be ready to lower your insulin intake, or you'll wind up with hypo, and you might pass out or something, because you're going to be returning to normal, and now you're taking too much insulin. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, and most people I see with type 1, they end up just getting on a background dose of Lantus, like a minimum dose of Lantus. They just get that, it's in the background, and that covers them through the day. They don't have to take, multiple or any, short acting insulin, and their body's just regulated. So it's very, very, very easy, especially from younger people going through teenage years. They really don't like taking their insulin, sort of get rebellious.
Right.
Well, I shouldn't have to do this. This makes it a lot easier. It's one shot
Absolutely.
at night, you're done. That's it. And so
Absolutely. And I actually had two type 1 patients at the clinic before the fire who were type 1. One guy had a C peptide of zero point 0.1, the other guy had a C peptide of zero point 0.2. So literally almost no insulin production whatsoever. And they were both carnivore. And one guy injected 10 units of Lantus at bedtime. The other guy used 12 units of Lantus, and both of their A1Cs were 5.4 or 5.5. And so what Dr. Chafee said is exactly spot on. Hey, KK, newly diagnosed atherosclerosis of the aorta. I'm 5 years a pescatarian. Would a vegan diet be recommended?
Hell no.
No, I don't think so. But I mean, the thing is that I mean, a vegan diet, it doesn't necessarily mean anything, right? Because Oreo cookies and heroin are vegan, right? So that just means without meat. And so there are a lot of ways you can really hurt yourself by going vegan. There's some ways you can benefit. I mean, if you're cutting out a lot of high octane garbage from processed foods and things like that, and getting to more whole foods, you'll improve short term, but you still do need meat. And there's a lot of things in the plants and the sugars and the carbs and the seed oils that really do contribute to that inflammatory process that is atherosclerosis. I saw a vegan gentleman make comments about how cardiovascular disease is the number one killer or in the world, really the first world. But
Yep.
um, it's that's true, but it's not doesn't mean that meat and saturated fat is the cause of that. As
Right.
we've reduced our animal fat intake, saturated fat intake, heart disease rates have tripled.
Yep.
So like, where's the connection there? And in fact, the journal, all the major journals now are actually publishing just the opposite. Even the Journal of the American College of Cardiology published it, I think, in 2020, a large study showing a meta-analysis showing that, like, all the data, available data, was not connected with
Absolutely.
atherosclerosis.
From plants already. So the plant-based people are wanting you to eat even less meat. And now a specific question for KK. Thank you for the super chat, KK. Do you really believe it was the meat? I mean, the fish that caused you to have atherosclerosis? Because I don't. I think it was the carbohydrates and the sugar and even if you were avoiding added sugar, KK, there's still copious amounts of sugar in fruit and in honey and in other things. And people think, and this is just drives me nuts, Doc. They think that there's only fructose in fruit. And
Yeah,
I did a video a few weeks back about the secret sugar in fruits.
Okay, this is
All fruits, they have fructose, yes, but they also have glucose and they also have sucrose,
yeah,
table sugar. They literally have sucrose and glucose in them in addition to fructose, all both of which are going to spike your blood sugar, KK, and cause inflammation all over your body, including inside your aorta on the intima. And that's what caused your atherosclerosis. It wasn't the little bit of fish you're eating every day. My recommendation would be to eat lots more fish and add back fatty red meat to your diet and eggs with the yolk, and get rid of all the sugar, whether added or natural. Get rid of all the grains and get rid of all of the vegetable seed oils, KK. And I've got videos on this channel, and Dr. Chafee's got videos on his channel that will walk you through the simple beginning steps to do that. It wasn't the fish, KK. Come on. Come on.
yeah, definitely.
Lynn, sphincter of Odie dysfunction. It flared up after 30 days on carnivore. What are your thoughts?
I don't know. I don't think it's from the meat anyway.
No,
It's
not from the meat.
yeah,
No, it's not from the meat. And also sphincter of Odie dysfunction is the only way you can diagnose it is with a NG2 with an EGD with a ERCP. That's the only way you got to get in there and actually see the sphincter
oh
in the
shit.
duodenal wall. And so the symptoms of sphincter of Oddi dysfunction are also it can be the symptoms of many other right upper quadrant problems. So instead of just thinking that's what it is again, I'd probably go see my doctor, Lynn, and say, "Hey, I need you to check this out because I'm eating a much healthier diet now, and I'm having these new symptoms." And don't go in and say, "I've got sphincter of Oddi dysfunction." So go in and tell the doctor your symptoms, and then hush and let your doctor go from there. Okay, that's how you do that for all you guys. Don't go in with a diagnosis. Go in with the symptoms. That's what your doctor needs from you. Melanie says, I'm 50 with Hashimoto's. I stopped my period a year ago while on carnivore. I'm trying to up fat to 80/20.
That's one thing
What
that
are your
will
thoughts
always
on a
go.
fat
We'll
fast? Is it
always go
necessary
with
for
the
ketones?
diagnosis
well, I
before
mean, look, if you're trying to really ramp up your ketones,
symptoms.
that can help. You're just eating
Just search it up on
tons and
Google.
tons of fat, and you're going to
Everyone's
produce
doing
a lot of
that
ketones that can be
nowadays.
beneficial. I mean, there are certain
Takes away.
situations like in epilepsy or cancer where you've seen like a higher proportion of ketones is beneficial and neuroprotective, especially in the cases of epilepsy. I think you're doing everything right, though. I think that's perfect. You're eating a high fat meat based diet, and if you want to fast, I guess you can. I'm not. I
I feel
don't
like my chair is about to
generally
break.
fast myself. I generally eat about once a day. That sort of, I guess, is a
It's like
fast,
that though.
but I'm
This
not
chair supposed to
restricting my
support me,
body from nutrients when
right?
it wants it. I'm just eating when I'm hungry, and if you're eating
So I would hope so.
high density nutrition, you tend to not be hungry as often. So I think you're doing very, very well, and I don't think that there's anything to really change there.
Yeah, I agree. The only thing I would add to that, Melanie, is that it's very, very common for some people, usually women, not always women, to still be doing some degree of portion control or
Mm,
calorie restriction. And I would the fact that your period stopped You
Mm.
said you're 50, so you may just be going through menopause.
Yeah.
But the fact that you lost your period makes me think that you're probably trying to eat a palm sized portion of steak, maybe lean steak. You need to stop that. You are an animal, Melanie. You need to eat just like every other animal on the planet. When they see species appropriate food in
Carnivore is
front of their
not.
face,
What's the other?
they
What's the other?
smash it, they wolf it down.
There's
They don't
carnivores and
hesitate. They don't
omnivores.
stop until they
Omnivores.
literally are so
I think
stuffed
it's
they cannot eat
omnivores.
another
They
bite or
call
they
it the
will
when they eat the
vomit.
plants.
That's how an animal should eat. And Melanie, that's
Herbivores.
how you should eat.
Carnivores and omnivores.
Yeah,
I think it is.
I mean, like lionesses and things like that. They're not worried about their hips. They're just eating
No,
just a ton
no,
of
eat
meat.
till you're full. And if you're
Be
eating the
fine.
wrong
Yeah,
shit, you need to worry about your hips. But if you're eating
Yeah.
the right stuff, your hips are going to be just
Please,
right.
no fiber.
Marty
Yeah.
Mack says 1,278 days of not eating fiber. Also, no more IBS. Meat
Very
heals.
good.
That's
Yeah.
this is what we're talking about, guys. Anybody else have essentially put your ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, or IBS in remission with eating a carnivore diet? Put your story in the comments. Or any chronic medical condition that you and your doctor thought was permanent, but you've essentially put it in remission by eating a carnivore diet. Please put it in the comments, because I promise you, there are vegans like vegans live longer in the comments. They're going to read your comments. So vegans live longer is said about 100 times in this chat. Cardiovascular disease is the top cause of death globally. Yes, vegans live longer. We know that.
Yeah.
But what you're intimating is that it's the meat that's causing that, or the saturated fat, or the cholesterol in our diet that's causing that. And all of those things have been disproven. As Dr. Chafee said, even the American Heart Association published
Yeah.
an article that says saturated fat has nothing to do with heart disease. And even years before that, they came out and said that eating cholesterol has nothing to do with heart disease whatsoever. So vegans live longer. If you've got a question, I'm eager to answer your questions, but just spamming that same comment over and over and over, it kind of makes you look dumb. It doesn't really affect us in any negative way.
Look at him.
Thanks
Look
for
at
the
him.
super chat.
Everybody pointing. Look at this.
One thing-
Solomon says, is there a difference between potassium citrate and bicarbonate in terms of supplementation? Is it okay to mix and match?
I wouldn't have too much experience with either of those. I tend to just eat meat and drink water.
Yeah, I wouldn't supplement with bicarb, Soleimani. Your stomach acid's going to basically cancel the basic nature of that in 10 seconds. So you're wasting your money. If you want to get extra potassium, you can use potassium citrate. There's 20 different kinds of potassium on Amazon. I tend to like something that's got lots of stuff, like the Keto Chow Daily Mineral Drops. It's got potassium, magnesium, and then it also has iodine and selenium and molybdenum and all kinds of other little minerals. And even electrolytes are minerals too, right? Don't discriminate against the electrolytes. They are also minerals. But by doing that, if you get enough potassium and you take a little too much, if you have normal kidney function, you're just going to urinate it out, just with any of the other minerals. And so I would do something like that so that you're getting kind of a multi-mineral supplement rather than just trying to focus on one particular electrolyte.
Yeah.
All right, Doc, can you stay for a few more questions? Are you good?
No, yeah, no, I'm fine. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Totally,
The people are loving this. We got 2,500 folks watching this, Doc.
oh,
Lindy,
lovely.
thanks, doctors, for inspiring me in my life change. 10 months, beef, butter, bacon, and eggs, 150 kilograms lost.
Wow.
Damn.
Yeah.
That's 320 something pounds. That's a lot of weight. Reverse prediabetes. Feeling amazing. I have lymphedema, which causes discomfort. Should I limit fat and salt intake? Absolutely not. I just spoke at a lipedema conference, and this is a common myth that doctors will tell you with lipedema and lymphedema, which are two separate things. You do not need to limit animal fat or salt. You need to salt your food to taste, and you need to eat plenty of healthy animal fat. Neither one of them affect lipedema or lymphedema in a negative fashion. What say you, Doc?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And also, you think about how much you've benefited off of doing exactly what you're doing now. Why are you changing your game plan?
Her doctor told her to stop that stuff. I guarantee you, 100%. She went to a new doctor, and he's like, "Oh shit, stop eating all this fat and salt." And
My
now
God,
he
you're getting
spooked
so
her.
healthy. I'm
He
gonna be out of a
spooked her. Yeah,
job.
but he ignored the 150
Yeah,
kg loss, man. He's like, oh, that's too much fat,
yeah.
guaranteed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing is like you don't switch horses in the middle of the race, and we
Yeah.
I always love my father would get so upset whenever we'd watch like football on a Sunday or something like that because like or if we were supporting a team we'd be watching we'd be doing really well and then at the end we just change all the game plan change our entire defense and go to like a prevent defense
Yeah,
and we just start losing
yep,
yards and we end
yep,
up losing the game and it would drive him crazy. It's like why are you changing the thing that
yep.
got you in the position that you're in?
Yeah,
Like,
if you're
why would you
winning,
do that?
don't change what you're doing. And honey,
That's it.
you're winning. Okay, you're
Yeah. If it
winning.
ain't broke, don't fix it.
100%. Brain Game says, will carnivore help with neuropathy in the legs, bowels, intestines due to cauda syndrome? Will it help repair nerves?
Well, it can help your body heal from damage. There is such a thing as damage done, but I have seen people improve significantly. Sometimes when we do surgery for cauda equina or for a peripheral or for radiculopathy, we remove the compression and a lot of times we have to
There
say like
was
well this
oh
may
my
not get
god,
it better but it'll stop it
I
from
feel
getting
bad
worse
for
because we
not
can't guarantee.
I feel bad for not speaking up, and I hope I see this guy again at work. Was it yesterday? Yeah, yeah. Today's Saturday. At work yesterday, there was this guy that he came and he was talking about like he came in with a limp. He's talking about his knee just keeps shifting left and right because of arthritis, and apparently carnivore or ketovore can help with arthritis pain. It could drastically help maybe reverse it, but definitely help with your
Guarantee one way or the
arthritis
other.
pain.
We hope that it gets better but it doesn't always and so it sounds like you're in that category
So if I
and
see
so
him
a lot of
again,
people
I'm going to tell him.
even when they have their nerves
Have you
decompressed, they
tried
will
30
continue to
days
have
carnivore?
quite
Try 30
quite
days
bad
carnivore.
pain,
See if
quite
that works
debilitating pain. And I
before
have
you replace
definitely
that
seen that
knee.
improve significantly. I think just your interpretation of the pain,
Because that's
the
it's really
inflammation is going to
sad,
be
man.
reduced, and your experience of that pain is certainly going to be reduced. And it could, well, it's just going to make your body
If I could
healthy in
change one
general.
person's
And
life,
so nerves take a long
change
time
the
to
whole
heal,
life.
but it's going to
I've changed many
put you
people's
into a
lives.
better position to heal from it. Can it heal it all the way? I can't tell you that.
Right.
We'll just have to see. But I have seen it help.
Peripheral neuropathy was one of the
Yeah.
first things that made me think that keto carnivore was more than a weight loss hack. I'm talking about
Mm.
7, 8, 9 years ago when I first started recommending this to my most morbidly obese patients. You never see neuropathy get better. I had so many patients on gabapentin and pregabalin, just hundreds and hundreds of them for neuropathy from the lumbar spine, from a previous injury, from the cervical spine. And these people would come in and be like, Doc, I ran out of my Neurontin prescription and I didn't refill it. And my neuropathy is so much better. Can keto do that? And initially I was like, well, hell
Call
no,
my
keto
mom
can't.
and
That's
tell
just a
keto.
weight loss diet, right? But then the more I started really hearing this hundreds of times, especially with carnivore, especially, good God, how many thousands of stories have I heard? I'm like, well, shit, maybe it does. And so when you start to think about it, yeah,
Can we play that?
axons can regrow, myelin sheaths can rejuvenate. It's a
Improve significantly. I think just your interpretation of the pain,
Let me replay that.
the inflammation is going to be reduced, and your experience of that pain is certainly going to be reduced. And it could, well, it's just going to make your body healthy in general.
You
And
got a
so
little doggy.
nerves take a long time to heal, but it's going to put you into a better position to
Oh, you
heal
got a
from
little,
it. Can it
is that
heal
doggy?
it all the way? I
Yeah,
can't
you got
tell
a
you
little
that.
doggy too.
We'll just have to see. But
These
I
dogs are
have
the
seen it
fucking
help.
best, bro. I swear.
peripheral neuropathy was one of the
Yeah.
first things that made me think that keto carnivore was more than a weight loss hack. I'm talking about
Mm.
7, 8, 9 years ago when I first started recommending this to my most morbidly obese patients. You never see neuropathy get better. I had so many patients on
Oh,
gabapentin
you're
and
talking about getting
pregabalin,
getting it better.
just hundreds and hundreds of them for neuropathy from the lumbar spine, from a previous injury, from the cervical spine. And these people would come in and be like, Doc, I ran out of my Neurontin prescription and I didn't refill it. And my neuropathy is so much better. Can keto do that? And initially I was like, well, hell no, keto can't. That's just a weight loss diet, right? But then the more I started really hearing this hundreds of times, especially with carnivore, especially, good God, how many thousands of stories have I
I
heard?
need to just
I'm
study
like,
it.
well, shit, maybe it
If I go
does.
to if I go
And
to
so when
school
you start
again,
to think about
if
it,
I get
yeah,
enough money
axons can regrow, myelin
and I go to
sheaths can
school,
rejuvenate.
university,
It's a
Yep.
very slow process, but it
I am
can
going
happen. And then
for.
also, I think a lot of the nerve pain, the small fiber pain and stuff, is just
Once I start
chronic,
reading,
inappropriate
oh,
daily inflammation caused by the
once I
diet from
start
that
reading,
day. And when you
I
stop
think I
eating the
should start
shit,
reading.
I think immediately those nerve fibers just start to lighten up and be like, oh yeah, that's better. I feel
Resident
better now. I'm going to
Sophia,
stop sending pain
I'll
signals
just
to the
post some
brain.
dumb shit on
Do you
there.
think that, Doc?
Use social media to
Absolutely. I
spread a
think that's
message
exactly what's going
and then
on.
read.
Is
Just don't
and I
use.
think that I've seen it all myself, and I've seen it
Consume
with
stuff like
people.
this publicly
If someone would
as
slip into my food, if I
content
was at
like I'm
a
doing right
restaurant
now.
and they had a bit of rice or beans or something like that. I remember going to
But
a restaurant previously, and I was trying to sort of scrape the rice and
it's a
beans off, but
bubble.
I didn't get all of it off.
Love the
And I remember
bubble.
eating it, and I was like, "Well, what's this?" Okay, I'm like, "Come on, you know the answer to that." But he was just like, "Well, I'm going to try it." And so he had pizza, and he just said he felt miserable for the next few days. He was like, his joint
Feels like
pain was
deja
up, his
vu.
back
I feel
pain
like I've
was up,
seen this
and
somewhere.
this is something that he hadn't experienced in months and months and months of being carnivore. All of a sudden, bang, back
Yeah,
like that. So that's an acute inflammatory response,
yeah.
and you're going to be experiencing that right there. So I think that's a
So
major
once you go
part of this.
carnivore, you can't go back.
Absolutely. And I've got a big toe that's kind of my red flag. I never have lumbar pain. I've never had an injury. I don't have any reason to have neuropathy. But if I stray too far off the straight and narrow, Dr. Chafee, I have a little bit too much alcohol. I have a little bit too many carbs, maybe my anniversary, maybe my birthday. And Nisha's like, oh, come
This is
on.
just
And
the
I'm like, I
beginning.
give in to the temptress, right? That night, my left big toe, I'll just have this weird tingling, itchy neuropathy that is bad enough that it keeps me awake. But that never happens unless I go off the reservation. It's so funny, Darby. I've read your question a couple of times, and I can't really figure out what you're asking or how I would answer your question. Thanks for the super chat, though. I appreciate it very much, but I don't really understand what you're asking. Can you get anything out of that, Doc?
I'm trying to. We can actually get type 1 diabetes antibody test instead of saying. I'm not. No, I would just be guessing. Unfortunately,
Yeah, sorry, Darby. We'd love to answer your question, but we don't understand it. Wigster, severe psoriasis from strep throat. 3 months in, I'm now stuck. Do you think autoimmunity caused by molecular mimicry is able to heal with a carnivore?
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Well,
100%.
yeah.
How
You're
so?
just getting rid of the thing that your body's going to attack, and then you're not going to have the antibodies that will then spill over and attack the rest of your body. Yeah.
Absolutely. I've got a video on this channel about psoriasis. Got some research down in the show notes. Psoriasis is very intimately linked to inflammation and hyperinsulinemia. And a fatty meat heavy ketovore, or a full carnivore diet is going to lower your insulin back to low normal very quickly, and
We
it's
have
going to
been streaming
decrease the
for
chronic inappropriate inflammation in your body,
68
Wixter.
minutes.
100% I agree with Dr. Chafee. All right, Doc, let's
It's
get a
only
couple of
8.
more
It's only 8
here.
p.m.
Albets,
No, I mean,
no, you don't.
no,
No, eating fatty meat did not cause your pancreatitis.
no.
I bet. I 100% guarantee you that it was either too much alcohol, too much fructose, too much highly processed carbohydrates, too
Yeah.
much, maybe too much medications, either legal or illegal. I don't know you that well, so I'm not going to judge. But it was not the fatty meat and eggs with the yolk
Yeah.
that caused your pancreatitis, Abets. And so I would encourage you to eat more fatty red meat and eggs with the yolk.
Or possibly a scorpion. You never know.
It could have been a scorpion. That's exactly right. Very rare, but possible. All right, we'll get one more, Doc. Karen says carnivore for 7 months. T score -3 for both femoral necks on her DEXA scan. Use leg machines at Planet Fitness enough that muscles shake afterwards
Fuck Planet
3 times
Fitness.
a week. Is that enough weight bearing exercise? She's 77. Okay,
Should
first
you
of
go to
all, let me
Planet
just
Fitness?
say I'm in love with Karen Mora.
Cancel your membership.
The
Go to a
76-year-old
different
woman
gym.
is at Planet Fitness hitting the leg press three
Yeah.
times a week to the point where she's got jello legs when she's done.
Yeah.
Boo, huzzah, Karen Mora. Honey,
Absolutely.
rock that shit. Do you think that's enough weight bearing?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, it's a lot more than anyone else is doing your age, and
100%.
so, and so you just feel your body, and if that's what your body can do, then do it. And but you can keep challenging yourself, and you're going to be able to build up. But I mean, leg days, 3 days a week, I think that's probably very good. You want to
That's
have a
crazy.
you,
I
you
don't even
go
do
into
it
growth
once. Well, I do
cycles
it
for
once a
like
week, but
36
I
hour
just
growth
train legs
cycles.
too,
If you're
and
doing sort of more than
did
that, if you're doing
some
sort of like daily
some squats.
heavy legs, you probably not going to get as much bang for your buck on that. So I think
Exactly.
that's a very good
Did
one.
some
Yeah,
squats.
that's awesome. Karen, my only worry with your T score, I just don't want you to overdo it too quickly, too much too quickly. So I'm 100% in love with you for what you're doing,
Mhm.
but also listen to your body. It sounds like you've got this figured out. I've got a couple of YouTube videos on this channel about osteoporosis, osteopenia, and bone strength, because there's other things you can do to help those bones get stronger as well. But this right here, this is a grand slam. You win today's chat 100%.
Yeah.
All right, Doc. Last question. Oh, Ron Melrose, thank you very much for the super chat. Evelyn says
$100.
some plant-based doctors say animal protein worsens immune conditions, increasing
See,
antibodies
these
in the
doctors
body. What are
don't
your
know
thoughts on
shit.
this? I have hyperthyroidism.
Well, I wonder what their evidence is. I don't think there is any, and
I totally agree.
yeah,
I would
and so
say your doctor's full of shit, but Dr. Chafee would say, I really don't know what the evidence is. You see the difference? That's the difference.
yeah, no, I mean that's the thing. I mean, you just don't see autoimmune issues in the carnivore community. There was, I've seen it
I ain't
directly.
watching Joe
I'm
Rogan.
sure you've seen
You
it.
gotta listen
Dr.
to Joe
Barry, like
Rogan and stuff.
people that are just completely reversing their autoimmune issues. Autoimmune issues respond extraordinarily well to a carnivore diet and even a keto diet. And there's tons of studies with. Like Crohn's and ulcerative colitis, looking at you just putting people on an elemental diet, just giving them just the macros and micros that they need,
Hey
and
guys,
that this actually is better to get them out of Crohn's
nobody's
flare up
watching, so I
than
might as well just turn
steroids,
off the stupid
and
live
that
stream.
putting someone on a